What will the 2021 NHL divisions look like? For sure, we know we're having realignment, but today we're looking at the latest updates on what the divisions likely look like, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're looking again at the 2021 NHL Realignment, which is only going to be done on a temporary basis, but largely driven by the fact that the Canada-US border is currently closed and traveling back and forth is not really something that's possible right now due to all the quarantine rules and everything. So we're going to have different divisions. We've known that for a while, and there's been a lot of talk and back and forth on what exactly they're going to look like. Now, as of the last week or so, we've had updates on what things were looking like, but then last night we saw another update on some more tweaks. Now, of course, keep in mind, these are not finalized as I record this video. Things could be tweaked, but I do have a good idea, I think, of what the tweaks might be if there are changes. So we'll quickly discuss that here as well. Getting started, we know the one thing that's a given and will not change is the fact that we're going to have an all Canadian division. We don't know if they're going to call it the Canadian Division, the Northern Division, or if they're going to give the divisions any kind of unique names, which I think would be a cool idea for the, for the current year, just as a one-time deal. They used to have divisional names instead of just calling them East, West, etc. But obviously we know the 7 Canadian teams. Clearly, we have the 2 Ontario teams, the Maple Leafs and the Senators. We've got the Montreal Canadiens out of the province of Quebec. We've got the Winnipeg Jets in Manitoba. We've got the Flames and the Oilers over in Alberta, and the Vancouver Canucks out in BC. So we've got 7 Canadian teams, which is going to mean there's going to be 3 U.S. divisions comprising themselves of all 8 teams in each division. Now, of course, we know right now it's the Central Division that is based on the current format that we used in the last number of years that has the 7 teams. And once next year rolls around, so 21-22, the Seattle Kraken are supposed to come in. They will join the Pacific Division. And then the Coyotes are supposed to move to the Central. And we'll have 4 divisions of 8 teams next year and even things out. But for now, the 7-team division, of course, will be in Canada. Now, jumping up now to, well, I guess for now we'll call the Eastern Division, which is going to be comprised of the teams that are pretty well the furthest east, but there's certainly some teams that could be moved between the East and the Central, and there's also some teams between the Central and the Western one that could be, slightly tweaked here as well. But from what we know, the teams in the Eastern Division, and I don't think this is going to change, I'll be surprised if it does. We have, obviously, from the old Atlantic Division, the Boston Bruins and the Buffalo Sabres. And then we have a bunch of Metropolitan Division teams, including all the teams in the New York area, including the New York Islanders, New York Rangers, and New Jersey Devils, the 2 teams from Pennsylvania, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Philadelphia Flyers. And, of course, we have the Washington Capitals in there as well. So, that's a pretty stacked division. Those teams, for the most part, a lot of them, like 6 out of 8 teams, are used to playing each other quite a bit and have some good rivalries. So, of course, that's going to be good. Up in the Canadian Division, there's lots of great rivalries there as well. And we could even get some more rivalries built from the Eastern and Western Canadian teams who don't play each other quite as much. I know there's already been some talk about maybe realignment heading into the following season. Maybe they don't go back to the old format. And maybe, just maybe, we get some different divisions. I know there's a lot of people up in Canada who would love to see a Canadian division be a permanent thing, but I really have my doubts that they will go with that on a long-term basis. But I guess we will see what happens. Now, looking at the teams right now that are expected to be in the Central Division, this has been where there's been some more last-minute changes. Of course, right now in the Central, we have teams like the Carolina Hurricanes, along with the 2 teams from the state of Florida, the Florida Panthers, and the current Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, we also have some teams that are pretty good rivals in the Chicago Blackhawks, Detroit Red Wings, and St. Louis Blues, along with the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Nashville Predators. Now, of course, really in the last number of years, we've seen realignment on a couple different occasions, and these teams, for the most part, outside of the Carolina and the Florida teams, are all used to playing each other a fair bit as well, and there could be some good rivalries. Now, in one of the more recent updates we saw before this, we had a team like the Blues shifting west and playing in the Western Division instead. Now, of course, you notice Minnesota's not in this division. That seems to be the most recent switch that we've seen here, is the Wild going back into that Western spot. And it looks like the Blues are coming back to the Central, but that, like I said, could be tweaked. It's not 100% confirmed. It could even be the Dallas Stars. So let's take a look at the current what we call the Pacific or Western Division that we'll see for the coming year. Some of this we know for the most part will be the same. Like, for example, the 3 California teams for sure will be in there. The San Jose Sharks, Anaheim Ducks, and Los Angeles Kings. We've got the Vegas Golden Knights, which also I think is fair to say a given, along with the Arizona Coyotes. You get the Colorado Avalanche, Minnesota Wild, and Dallas Stars. Now, as I said, the Minnesota Wild was reported by their athletic writer, Michael Russo, late last night, indicating that he had word from multiple sources. He confirmed it from multiple people before he reported it, just to make sure that the Wild had indeed shifted back to the Western team division, whereas before there had been talk that they had shifted back to the Central and the Blues were the ones going to the Western part. And of course, it was going to be interesting to see the Blues play the Golden Knights more, especially with Pietrangelo, the former Blues captain, switching teams in free agency. And obviously some of those teams had developed rivals. You get Vegas, Colorado, which you'd see a little bit more too, which will be fun. So clearly, that's exciting. It's not set in stone. A lot of it boils down to obviously the team and ownership agreeing to where they're going to play. The schedule obviously will be impacted. Travel will be impacted, as well as local broadcast rights. Broadcasting does play a role as well, because obviously any local broadcast agreements have to be agreed to be played, like showing the games at certain times. And clearly, for a team that's more central, playing more Western teams, that means they're going to have a lot more games on at a different time than they're probably used to. So that certainly impacts that as well. So obviously, when they agree to broadcast games for a season, they see so many local home games, and then they'll have so many road games or whatever. So all that has to be hammered out, but it shouldn't be too complicated here. So we've seen a lot of going back and forth in recent days. So therefore, that tells us that obviously at this point there could be more changes. It's not until it's voted on and we say it's finalized and it's fully announced. You can't take this to be 100% accurate. But as of right now, that's how things are looking based on the latest reports from NHL insiders. Now, another big question is, how are the playoffs going to work? There really hasn't been a ton of talk about this, but I did do some research on it and some digging to see what's been said. And from what I can see from Pierre LeBrun, who's a very trusted NHL insider, he says that from what it's going to be, and it makes sense, that based on the border being closed, that they will be going with divisional playoffs with a 1-4 format. And then they'll go like 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and then obviously that'll take you to a next round in the division as well. So you'll have a division semifinal and then a division final from there. Now, the only thing that we don't know is once we get past that, how is it going to work? Because you normally would take 2 divisions and make a conference, and we don't know. I would assume the Canadian division maybe be paired up with the East, considering a little bit more of the teams are Eastern in Canada, but really where you have the whole northern part of Canada, above the U.S., you're kind of spread out pretty good. I don't know really if that makes the most sense or not. It's difficult to say. You could do it that way, or you could also pair it up with the western part, because there are also 3 teams that are pretty west. The Winnipeg Jets are somewhat central, so it's you kind of go either way. If you think about it, the Jets being pretty much in the middle, and then you got Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal on one side, you get Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary on the other. You could kind of go either way. And I don't think they're going to wait and see who makes it. At least I wouldn't think so. I think they'd want to have that ironed out ahead of time, so as teams are getting deeper in the season, they'll know what's likely going to happen. But at this point, they could go either way. But I would think just more than likely we'll see Canada division play against the Eastern one, and then the Central and the Western be somewhat of a conference until we keep going through here, until we get ourselves down to a Stanley Cup final. Obviously, this is going to be a tricky part when it comes to the border, though, because we don't know what the border situation is going to be. It's hard to predict even a month out, let alone several months out. When we get to the point that we're going to have even a conference final, there's going to have to be travel. So how that's going to work, we don't know. I mean, the NHL certainly will want to prolong and push out any potential travel as long as they can, with the hopes that the border closure will be resolved and will be open. And if that's not, then they'll have to figure out quarantining or doing something. I don't know, could delay that part of the playoffs, maybe getting finished up. Hard to say, but let me know your thoughts on these latest division and the playoff formats, and we can discuss further. And of course, we'll be talking about this again once we have some finalized reports. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll have it here in the not too distant future. It'll be nice to see the NHL and the PA get this hammered out in the next few days. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you next time.